Okay, so well, as far as the collaboration goes, I think one key aspect which might not sound like rocket science, but I think it's a key principle in the Bible is just straightforward discipleship and sharing. So I think when we get together and we disciple each other and we share each other's stories, that it might sometimes seem unproductive, but I think that always gives the anecdotes always give encouragements, and I've learned a lot from fellow Christian teachers and stuff and what they've done, and that's tremendously increased my capabilities in my workplace, and I think we can never sort of underestimate the power of just straight discipleship and meeting and just for the purpose of sharing stories.
Cool.
Um, and especially with regards to sharing with peers, I find there's two particularly useful things. And one thing I've learned is that leadership is that a lot of leadership's about principles, and we know that the fights against principalities, and I've learned that one principle I always want is religious freedom for everyone in my school and my staff, and sharing your reasons when you when you have an opinion about something, and being completely open about the fact that a faith has an aspect in what you believe is both important, it's respected, and actually gives freedom for other people to do the same, whatever it is. So that's one important thing that I've been growing in, and I found people are very open and receptive to that, and it's never a poor point to put with other reasons. And with peers, which I've learned from other people, which I'm less good at, but I've had many stories of people who've just offered to pray for people, and I've always heard of people always say yes. And with peers, and I've seen a lot of work, especially with other people in that respect, has worked a lot in the staff room, and never been afraid to make that offer.
The way I engage with people is to be motivated by that which is most dear to me, and that's my relationship with Christ. And I would say that both with peers and with the kids. I do think, however, that it is something that is hugely intentional, and I think personally I fall down on that. I think it's easy to slip into the sameness of all educators, and I think it takes a constant intentionality to be motivated by that which is dear to you, as opposed to be motivated by an end goal, or motivated by a report system, or motivated by the prestige of a promotion, or whatever the case.
And so currently I'm based at a school in Randburg that has quite a diverse population in every way possible, and it's an organisation that's trying to still bridge the gap. So that's one big area for me is that in Christ and God's eyes everyone is equal, and in South African society everyone's not equal, and there's a good 80 to 85% who are not getting anywhere close to the education that the other 15% is getting. So one massive way is to always be aware of that difference and to be working constantly to provide justice for the greater majority of people who are not having access to good education. And that can happen in any school environment. It can either be the entire school and the organisation that you work for, which I strongly encourage people to consider as careers, and there's a lot of support you can get if you get in a career like that. There's a lot of business people who want to throw money behind things that are going to be sustainable answers for South African solution. But there's also social justice issues within every school. And it might be a small thing, but I've noticed in staff rooms, the way we talk about kids, there's always a social justice issue. And I think the most important thing for us as educators is always the kids that need our help more than the ones that are doing well. And I've noticed and staff often fall into the trap of wanting to spend all their time and energy on the kids who don't actually need us as much as the others. And God has created everyone equal. He loves everyone dearly, and I think constantly fighting to do the right thing for those kids throughout your day, throughout your career, is a massively important thing. Yeah, I mean the work knows no limits, and one of the key things I believe in copying in this profession is we have the perfect Father in heaven, and being a father a father and a brother in the way to relate to people, and so. With keeping in the professional boundaries, I do see children as children and trying to be a father figure to them. That includes going to, I've certainly been to everyone's home. I've sat with them. I've met their parents. I've chatted about what they do, and there's always it's a learning curve, You don't want to come in as a rescuer, and you can sometimes fall into that trap. But there's grace and there's learning in our careers, and taking the risk, you'll get to the learning, the nuances of the difference between going the extra mile, meeting their family, talking about their family issues, and not being that rescuer. We'll get there. But if we don't take that risk to cross over into that, then you don't have the opportunity to learn those. And I'm still learning, obviously.
And I think our biggest challenge is the role of the family unit within society. It's probably degrading more, I think, within that sector of society than in most others. So it's certainly the upper echelons of society, both socially but also economically, and yet we have divorce rates higher than I've ever known them. We've got rates of abuse in homes like that which are surprising because of the presumption that these homes are stable homes because the money is stable, and yet the conditions in which many of these children are subjected to live can quite easily border on abusive, because of the neglect and so on that these kids of wealthy homes have to live in. So I think for us as educators, there's a real opportunity to be able to educate children in terms of life skills, but there's also an opportunity to be able to educate parents in terms of parenting, and as you develop that relationship with the parents, so your sphere of influence boils over more into even things like marriage, and I think that's got to be, well, certainly for me in my context, that's got to be one of the end goals I have in mind, to increase the sphere of influence I have with parents as kids enter their selection for matric subjects, the opportunity to begin to get genuine input from churches and from experts who have a God heart, I think is beginning to appear. I think time's a crucial word in this whole setup, because the divide is significant, and because of that, it's going to there's no quick fix, and I think that often the tendency that we can have as Christians is to look for the quick fix, and not realize that we need to be in this thing for the long haul. In the schools that I've worked, each school has a very dedicated, or each school has had a very dedicated outreach program, in which there has been a social element and an educational element, and I would say there's a lot that churches can learn from the schools, because many schools have these in place already. The interesting thing is that the school's motivation is driven through education, and the church would probably be driven through the social upliftment element of it. And I think that there's a brilliant possibility for real collaboration between churches and schools on this front that I think is being missed at the moment. But a lot of that boils down to time. A lot of it boils down to where in the school day are you able to manufacture time to bridge that gap. If there are kids who in your school because of bursaries and so on, where do you find the time to ensure that you are able to teach sufficient amounts of English to these guys, to ensure that they are coping alongside their peers, and yet at the same time not in any way ostracize them, because clearly they at this point aren't. It's a really sensitive issue that requires a lot of deliberate planning and significant amounts of time. And I think Ross has hit the nail on the head there, that this sort of change can't happen from a distance. You have to be thickly involved in people's lives, and I think that's where church needs to be massaging more. And to be frank, we're pretty rubbish at that. We've just started, God First has just started a really brilliant initiative into a school just down the road from where we hold church. It's a school that caters for how many thousand kids in the surrounding area, significant amounts of kids in the surrounding area. It's probably one of the only schools for that these sorts of children could enter, and God First Fourways has just started to begin to enter into that realm. But I think as we kind of put our toes into the water, so we realise how deep the pool in fact is, it's going to require a bucket load of work and time.
So that is the church actually starting a school?
So sorry, to clarify then, the school's called Witkoppen School. It's just off Main Road in Witkoppen. And it's a school that's been up and around for a while, probably for 15 years now. And we've got a chap in our congregation who has had a real heart to begin to improve the quality of education that takes place at the school. And so he started off by rallying a couple of guys together from the congregation and improving the quality of books in the library. The next step is to begin tutoring courses and so on. And so he's got friends of his from within the church, different life groups and so on, to begin to commit to coaching courses for sport, tutoring courses for maths and science, improve monitoring of the library, the teaching of how to use a book, how to research, that sort of stuff. That's been his drive, but as he's kind of gone into that area, he's begun to realize just how big the need actually is. So now it's not just a case of teaching kids how to research. Good grief, we actually need to teach them how to read. Okay, how do we teach them how to read when they don't have books? And so the kind of the ball of wool is just unraveled.
Yeah.
And just to add on that, I've been the school that's been the school helped by the wealthiest school. And there's a difference in how different schools do it. And the difference is once again the time factor.
Yeah.
You get the schools where they're fitting you into their schedule because they want to get their
points.
welfare points done, and you actually are not treated as, in some ways, and sometimes you're actually not treated as an equal human being. And then you work with people who are actually seeing you as someone who can contribute, who are willing to work in your time. And it doesn't matter which person you are, if you put the time in, you can become better at being the person, because it is grace. And I've also been the person who's fitted other people into my timetable, haven't seen them as equal if I really go down. And it's a path we must walk, but I'm just, but walk that path and get the time and take time to listen, because where there is someone to help, they're not deficit as a whole person. There's always something to learn back. And that way, just those nuances is how we can bring Christ in, because that is showing them, that's looking through the Christ eyes of they also created in God's image, and they also loved in.
I think to start off with, the reason that Terence interviewed us is because clearly we're the best already, so it's going to be difficult to answer how we become better, but we can tell you how we became good. And Ross will kick us off with it.
Push it back in my court.
Yeah.
I spent all my time training staff. There's no better thing than to be observing staff, giving them feedback, and mentoring them in their profession. Whether it's how they use data, it's how they talk to their kids, it's what they do. There's no better thing than to be helping your colleagues be better teaching through reflection. And the second thing I love doing is I reveal all my mistakes. I make many mistakes, and they're there for me to learn, and they're there for everyone else to learn. And I think that ties into the grace. And I understand that all of me is through grace, and I share the grace with everyone. And so my million mistakes is my biggest
that's good.
tool for helping for mentoring colleagues.
Yeah, that's good, because I think at the end of the day, teaching is a spotlight job. You're either in the spotlight to the kids, or you're in the spotlight to your peers. And there is no better way to teach kids and to teach peers but through example. And that example is in success, but it's also in failure. And I also think that we need to strive for excellence. And in each situation, you will have a different bar that needs to be gotten over. But I think that excellence needs to be a driving force, because that excellence is not for us or for the school or to be able to market the school sports results or academic results. The excellence is because we're driven by something deeper. We're driven by an innate desire to want to give back to God what He's given to us. And so I think as Christians, the tendency can be to err on the side of grace when the bar hasn't been reached, and I think I would suggest err on the side of excellence.